right, my name is Mark Weddle. Hello. I would like to use this opportunity to tell you a little bit about my story in surviving and thriving after cancer. Every week, Peggy, my wife, and I receive 2 or 3 calls from people who have or know someone who has serious issue with cancer. And what we found ourselves doing is describing our experience in some detail to give people an opportunity to understand what we did. And so the purpose of this video really is to cover some of the basics that I would cover in a phone call with somebody who called asking about our experience. The idea would be that if after you've seen this video, if these principles and some of the things we've done are of interest, that you could then contact me or my wife. We'd be happy to visit with you individually about your particular circumstance. But the idea being that it'd be nice to have some of the basics to understand right up front, and those are repeatable, so hence the video. So in December of 2015, I went in for what seemed to be a relatively minor kind of a lung surgery for a little collapsed lung issue, and they found that instead of a collapsed lung, I had what they called stage 4 terminal adenocarcinoma, or lung cancer. That was a complete shock to me because I never smoked, I never drank, it wasn't in an unhealthy environment. I ate well and so forth. So it really was kind of an out of the blue experience. Nonetheless, it was a pretty serious prognosis. They told us that you could expect with traditional or conventional chemo treatment that I would have about 9 to 12 months to live. There was a possibility that I might have a particular mutation that they'd done some extra research on, and in fact I did have that mutation. And that afforded me access to a particular oral chemo that was supposed to be well designed for that strain of cancer. And I looked in the research, and that particular treatment would give me perhaps 3 extra months. That didn't appeal to me in terms of long-term prognosis, but it seemed better than nothing, so we began that process. But again, the essence of the diagnosis was that I would probably have a year or a little bit more to live. The particular chemo they gave me had some side effects. They were supposed to be minimal. In fact, in my case, they were quite severe, and it got within 3 weeks to where I couldn't take that. I wasn't going to make it much longer. The essence of me describing that situation is to illustrate the fact that in my case, I had really nothing to lose by looking elsewhere outside of the conventional realm, and that's what we did. Had I stayed with the conventional treatment, I would have been in the chemo that it would be every 3 weeks for 4 or 5 months. I would probably be very sick, lose all my hair, have a pretty uncomfortable existence, and in the end they didn't really expect that would give me much extra time anyway. So it certainly made it interesting to consider alternatives. We had, and this is where we really feel like God intervened and gave us some ideas that we really hadn't considered. We had a friend in town who 8 years ago had developed cancer, and we kind of lost touch with him. And in fact, when I had heard the prognosis for this lady, I assumed that it was terminal, and honestly, having not seen them for some time, we assumed that she had died. By hook or by crook, we found out that no, she was not only surviving, she was thriving. So we arranged to meet with her to find out what she had done, and she told us about a place in Arizona called EuroMed. It is a place that uses European methodology in treatment of cancer. She had gone there 8 years ago and used their integrative approach to treating her cancer, and had been very effective. In fact, she was at a point now where she would only go back once a year for kind of a little maintenance treatment, and she was doing beautifully. Just looked like $1 million, was very healthy, bubbly, I mean, for all the world you couldn't tell she'd ever been sick. So we were pretty interested in that. We felt like we better look into it. We did some research, and of course one of the things that happens when you get a diagnosis like mine is that you're overwhelmed. You never considered that you would be in this situation, and all of a sudden one day you're wondering, what do we do? We had checked all sorts of conventional sources. We had looked at KU Medical Center here in Kansas, St. Luke's Medical or Hospital in Kansas City. We looked at MD Anderson, Cancer Centers of America, Columbia University in New York, and a couple others that I can't really remember at this point. All of them pretty much told us that we would be entering the same protocol. These every 3 weeks chemo for 4 or 5 months. They gave us kind of the same outlook in terms of prognosis. And so conventional medicine really offered me about the same answers no matter which way I turned. And so then it seemed like in traditional thinking, you know, it's just a question of where you're most comfortable going for what would be largely the same kind of treatment. When we found out about EuroMed, we started looking into that. We had done some work with a friend who was really interested in nutrition in terms of its ability to combat cancer. In fact, had survived cancer himself largely by using good nutrition. I wasn't sure whether that was going to be sufficient for me, so we started looking into these other alternatives, including EuroMed. We found out, and the rest of this video is really to describe to you what our experience was there and how they approach it. I don't think that EuroMed is necessarily the only place that someone should go, but we really want you to know about how they go about their treatment of cancer and kind of the methodology and the logic behind it. At EuroMed, they look at cancer as a chronic illness to be managed rather than a terminal one to be, just dealt with as a person really runs out of lifetime. So what they do there is it's considered integrative treatment, where it's like a three-legged stool. There is the fact you have to kill the cancer, and that's generally speaking involving some chemo. There is also the immune system, and there's a kind of an underlying belief, and this is at least ours, that God gave us an immune system to fight illness. And one of the problems with conventional treatment is some of the cancer treatment chemos can be so harsh that they actually destroy your immune system. So rather than this notion that, well, the poor patient, it came back with a vengeance, what really happens in many cases, cancer comes back to a defenseless body, one where the immune system's been compromised by the heavy dosage of chemo that somebody's taken in a conventional protocol, and they just simply can't fight it off. And so the immune system really is our body's method to fight off illness, and the methodology there is to protect and, in fact, strengthen the immune system, as opposed to having the immune system to be collateral damage in a treatment system. And then finally, there's kind of the whole process of detoxing. We live in an environment where there are a lot of environmental threats to our health, and then, candidly, our diets are part of that. And so there is an emphasis on getting the toxins, the things that have built up in our system through either poor diet or poor environment or whatever, sometimes even just stress. We need to get stress out of our life as best as we can. And that's easy to say and hard to do when you've got a terminal cancer diagnosis. So we understand that. But again, EuroMed goes about it in several ways. Let me describe for you the cancer killing approach, or the medicine side of it. EuroMed uses a methodology where they do use chemo, but that is a low-dose chemo approach. The way they do that, in my case, there were 6 different chemos that they identified that would impact the particular strain of cancer I had. But they deliver that in doses of about 10% of the normal dosage. And that does 2 things. One is it allows them to use multiple chemos. The other thing it does is it doesn't destroy your immune system. The way that's delivered is in a targeted methodology. Most of you who are watching this video, if you have had a PET scan in order to diagnose where your cancer is and if indeed it really is cancer, you've done this process. You fast from tonight until tomorrow morning. You go into the hospital. You don't eat anything, so your body is depleted of sugar. And they give you a drink or an injection, which is a combination of sugar and radioactive dye. And what they know, and this is the methodology behind a PET scan, is that cancer cells take up sugar at a rate of 15 or 20 times that of an ordinary cell. So a cancer cell metabolizes sugar rapidly. Cancer cell must have sugar in order to survive. So that cancer cell that's been deprived of sugar is extra hungry, if you will. It's like the big fish in the pond. And when it sees sugar coming, those cancer cells will grab that sugar more rapidly, more aggressively than the regular cells. And in so doing, in the PET scan example, they also pick up that radioactive dye. And then all the radiologist has to do is find out where the dye went. That's where the cancer is, because those are the cells that took up that radioactive dye. At EuroMed, they've taken that methodology and just said, look, if we're going to go after the rat, why don't we send in the rat poison in the same way that we would have sent in the radioactive dye, if you will. So they deliver the low-dose chemo with sugar to a sugar-deprived environment. In fact, not only do you fast, but they actually lower your sugar additionally with insulin. So when I would go in for my chemo treatment, I would fast from 10 o'clock at night till the morning. They would give me some insulin to further lower my blood sugar, and then deliver these 6 chemos with glucose. And my body would, the cancer cells would grab that mixture, and guess where the chemo would go? It would go right to the cancer cells. And that's called IPT, insulin potentiation treatment. It's been used there for 20 years. It's used in Europe regularly. It's just not something that's common in the U.S. For me, I would take 2 of those chemo treatments a week, Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. And that was, though it was a chemo and it did have some effect on me in terms of fatigue and so forth, I never threw up, I never got sick. It really never had that devastating effect that so many people report in conventional treatment. In between those chemo treatments would be other treatments that you would take on a Tuesday and Wednesday, or those days in between chemo, and those would include intravenous vitamin C, other kinds of minerals, amino acids, vitamins that are delivered in an effort to strengthen your immune system. There's also some detoxing things, but again, chemo would be part of it. Strengthening your immune system was another part of it. What's interesting to me is when I actually began my treatment with that mutation treatment at KU Medical Center here in Kansas. And at that time, there was no alternative or integrative kind of approach that they brought up in terms of me. Today on their website, they mention the use of intravenous vitamin C as a powerful tool to fight cancer in concert with other tools, which is interesting. So there is actually an evolution going on in conventional medicine, and it's moving in the direction of some of the things I'm talking to you about. Detoxing included some things like lymph massages. Your lymph system is the system that gets rid of stuff from your body. By the way, that's why there's some real dangers in the traditional lymphatic cancer treatments where they remove lymph nodes and disturb that system. So again, to minimize those kinds of invasions, surgery, radiation, and aggressive chemo is important to the survival of a healthy immune system. My immune system today is far healthier than it was even before I got sick. And large that came from supplemental vitamins and minerals and so forth, some of the treatments that they did down there and so forth. So the immune system is important, and that does include some other things that are part of your overall health. In our case, we felt like prayer was an important part. We had an awful lot of prayer warriors praying for us as we went through this. Another thing they really encourage you to do is to, and this is hard, but it's important, and that is to maintain a positive desire to live attitude. Not every day is rosy as you're going through any kind of cancer treatment, as I'm sure you can imagine. Certainly it was easier for me than if I'd have been in a traditional program. But the desire to succeed and to win and to live is probably an important part of this. In the detox area, or that whole arena, it is important to understand you've got to look for those things that fight against your health. Some of those would include eating sugar. Honestly, Americans are bringing on their high level of cancer themselves because cancer loves sugar and our diet is full of it. So, and I ate a pretty healthy diet going in. I didn't eat a lot of sugar, but for a lot of people that's a pretty tough transition. It's critical though, and so I would say to you today, whether you go to EuroMed or KU or whatever your local hospital is, there's just no place for a diet full of sugar. And honestly, right now, conventional doctors and medicine won't really emphasize that. But all the research is clear. Sugar is, if it doesn't cause cancer, it certainly feeds it. We really changed our diet to include a lot more fresh vegetables and so forth. We didn't eat a lot of processed foods, and we ate pretty healthy to begin with. But that's part of making sure that the environment that we're fighting in is a healthy one. When I went to EuroMed, I didn't have any idea how long it would be that I would be there. Of course, we didn't know that it would succeed, but we went with the conviction that this is where I needed to be. We've really felt like, honestly, in our case, we felt like God led us there. I think if you were to consider a place like that, once you make that decision, you need to go and really give it your all. A traditional week for us there would be 2 chemos, 2 other days of immune system boosting and detoxing, and then a 3-day weekend. And most of the time, honestly, I was able to do function pretty well. I did work remotely from my hotel room. We went to spring training baseball games. There's a lot of them in Phoenix in February and March. We did shopping. We went to museums, movies, out to eat, and so forth. So our experience, though we had to move to Phoenix essentially for about 9 weeks, it was not a negative time really, and it's kind of an interesting thing that it became almost a positive. It is a positive memory for us because I wasn't dysfunctional. The treatment wasn't harsh. There were times when I was pretty fatigued. Every case is different, and we keep track of an awful lot of people. We made a lot of friends down there and continue to have them because now that I'm past that, I am in a maintenance program. I go, in my case, about every 3 months for 1 morning for a little bit of the chemo treatment, and the intervals will lengthen. Again, my friend locally here goes once a year. But we were able to kind of function pretty normally. Some people will be there longer, some a little bit shorter. I think you would be thinking in terms of probably a couple of months is an average minimum. Some people less. My cancer was serious, but I had this advantage, and I would make this case in the strongest possible way. EuroMed has had terrific success when they didn't get somebody on their last leg. And what I mean by that is so many times the patients they get there have been through 2 rounds of chemo, it's come back, they tried radiation, they've tried surgery, and now they're really at their wits' end. And now conventional medicine is saying, well, we're out of bullets, and yeah, sure, try something alternative if you want. They're pretty negative at the front end, and then when they're out of ideas, then sometimes they're open to it. In my case, with the exception of 3 weeks on that nasty pill I took, I really didn't get into any other conventional treatment early. So I didn't have the disadvantage of having damaged my immune system early. And so when I went, my immune system, actually my lab work looked pretty good for a guy with terminal cancer. And I would say to you, their success rate has been tremendous with respect to those clients that they get first before they've suffered the damage of other kinds of treatment. So we would look at this as something we'd really encourage. What was interesting was in those days when you weren't receiving the chemo, you would just have these other maintenance kinds of things that you do, and often that would be done in a room with other patients doing various types of treatments. That was some of the most encouraging time for us because we would see people that had much more serious situations than ours that were getting better as time was going on. We would see people were back who were just for a maintenance day or 2 or even a maintenance week that had been in terrible condition. Some of them there were a couple there that were survivors of triple negative breast cancer, which the research will tell you there really is no conventional treatment for that. And they were thriving. There was one young mother of twins, a beautiful young lady that had just, she had been told by 2 oncologists in LA that she had 3 weeks to live, that she should get her affairs in order. And this was 2.5 years out, and she just looked like $1 million. She just was thriving, very energetic, and just back for maintenance, and it was quite encouraging. When we went, we did not know how long we would be there, and that's going to be the case for anyone. The way they are able to monitor your cancer is that you do lab work every week, and so there's certain cancer markers that they can kind of watch, and they can see how we're doing. Are we getting better? In my case, those markers weren't so badly out of normal that actually it was a little hard to tell how we were doing because I wasn't so far out of normal. I had lung cancer, but the markers were not terrible. But as you saw those progressing, there came a time when you could really check it with a PET scan. A PET scan in many cases is the very best way to find out. And after 2 months, we did a PET scan, and it was unbelievable. Almost no sign of cancer. The cancer that spread outside of my lung into the pleura and so forth was gone. The tumor of origin had shrunk to a very, not shrunk so much as it was, the metabolism was below survival rate, if you will. And so, and then a subsequent one about a year later, it's gone. So I'm not in remission. I am free of cancer. Now, could it come back? It could. Everyone has cancer cells that come out from time to time. Almost everyone's immune system gets them. Mine failed. All of us cancer patients had some point where our immune system failed to stop the cancer. But my immune system's in a lot better shape today than it was before. And I believe that if I have an errant cancer cell get loose, so to speak, my immune system and the maintenance approach will help take care of that. The reality of it is because it's not considered conventional, a lot of insurance doesn't pay for EuroMed and some of the other treatments that are available. By the way, there are others, and if at the end of this, if you do want to talk to us, we'll give you our phone number and you can text us. We can get back with you and talk. And again, Peggy and I talk to 2 or 3 new people a week. Happy to do so. And we do have some familiarity with other places that you can go. But in many of these cases, conventional health insurance won't pay for it. And I would simply say this, we have to push back against that, do the best we can. In many cases, in my case, it didn't pay for anything except the lab work. But here I am, I'm alive, I'm working. I'll collect an awful lot of Social Security checks in the future that will kind of repay the piggy bank. I think the first goal is to survive and live. And we can talk to you about there were some people there that had done the GoFundMe type thing. Some communities that come together, raise money for people. We are actually trying to develop a foundation to raise money to help people. So I would say you first of all look and see, is this a cancer treatment option for you? And then figure out, how do we fund it? I think that's kind of the essence of what I wanted to share on this little video. I would be happy to talk with any of you individually. Peggy can give a perspective of the spouse going through that journey with the cancer patient. And also she's done an awful lot of research just on the alternative cancer treatments available. If you would like to talk to us, you can text me. I think that's the best place to start, 785-532-8416. And the point would be, if you text me, then I can get back to you at a convenient time rather than just calling and catching me in the middle of something. So again, text me if you would like to visit, and Peggy's always welcome to join in that or to talk with you. So 785-532-8416, and we would be honored to get to share with you some of the things that we've learned. I will tell you that we have recommended a number of people who have gone to Phoenix to EuroMed, and I must say, I didn't say this earlier, they don't win them all. Cancer is a very serious battle. The ones which have not been successful largely have been those who went through other cancer treatments first and were kind of looking for something after some other process had failed. But we have seen a number of hugely successful outcomes, and just a good friend of mine just came home yesterday actually from a serious battle with bile duct cancer, which involves the liver and so forth. It's a very difficult one. We had another friend that died of that who went through conventional treatment, died in 3 or 4 months. So I don't want to offer a panacea, but I want to offer hope, and we're really big on that. So please give us a call or give us a text so we can connect with you, and we'll share our story and talk with you about yours.